Hello, students. Professor Stevenson here. I'm looking puffy jacket and messed up hair tonight. Everyone in my house has been super sick, so yeah, 2-year-olds and 4-year-olds sick. It's no fun to deal with, and a teenager, but he doesn't count. So I'm gonna try to make it as short as I can tonight. And because we're also individually going to be talking tomorrow and Tuesday, so which is very exciting. I'm very excited to do this, and you get to see this wonderful office again. So I'll send a link out on the announcements page sometime tomorrow, definitely before the conferences start. And the start time is in Minnesota time, so wherever else you are in the world. I'm not in Minnesota, but that's where our center is considered Minnesota, so keep that in mind. So Lori asked some really great questions. I'm not getting a chance to post on the discussion board this week myself, so I wanted to talk just briefly about my experience with kind of the sort of critical pedagogy and then the community literacy stuff as a way in. When I took this class that you're taking now as a TA many years ago, the bell hook stuff really spoke to me. The critical pedagogy and all of that. And not to say it still doesn't by any means. And her aims of, really making students aware and self-actualization and bringing your whole self and kind of not just the teacher as the center and the authority. I was like, yes. But there are so many limitations that I found there. And it sounds, I remember that the people in my TA class who wanted to make fun of it, because it does sound like very like touchy-feely, like yay, kumbaya, wanted to make fun of it because it sounded easy. And in fact, I remember thinking to myself, like, this is hard to like really meet, 18-year-olds where they are and try to get them to be co-creators of knowledge and learning, especially ones that have no business doing it. I teach at a big, large university, and while many students love being there, there are definitely some who don't care at all. So there's that. I also kind of have this commitment to social justice and all this good stuff, and Lori asked the question about politics in the classroom, and that's always been a tough one for me because we've always been in my classes writing about controversial issues is okay. Like, a student picks one and they're able to write. Not that that's exactly what I always do in my class. Sometimes I do. I mix it up a lot. But it's something that if the student self-selects, I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Like, you should write about this issue. You should research it. You should think about it. Over time, I found students were like just fitting into these little boxes. And so a couple years ago, I was like, hey, I want to teach my English 102 class not from the theme of intersectionality. So intersectionality is the concept, they're interlocking oppressions, okay? A women's study professor would like take issue with the way I taught intersectionality in my class, but I taught it as like a research method. Like, too often I would get students that wanted to write about abortion and they would rehearse the same conversation, right? And so for me, I was like, let's work on a different conversation. So students would kind of think all semester on one big topic, and they wrote 3 different essays on it. One of them was like, they do a rhetorical analysis of a documentary film that's tangentially or really directly related to their topic. The second one was a big research paper where they took an issue not in like pro-con, but in an intersectional stance. So they needed to see how it affected different people from different walks of life, different races, different classes and stuff. And I wasn't thinking in any capacity that this was, which is completely naive, by the way. I wasn't thinking in any capacity that this was a political thing. I thought, hey, like I had this big light bulb. Like this is a way as a writing teacher to get people from being like, this is a pro-choice. I'm pro-choice and this is what pro-choice looks like. And this is pro-life and I'm what pro-life look. But really to like look at this issue from so many different perspectives. And I thought I was genius until I got some teaching evaluations back that were like, this liberal professor, she's making us look at all this crazy stuff and she's indoctrinating us. And I was like, I'm not indoctrinating you. You know, I'm asking you to like research this thing from a lot of different perspectives. And I had to check myself pretty hard and like think, am I indoctrinating them? I still don't exactly think that I was indoctrinating them, but and in a different political era, like where that stance, where that word intersectional, I didn't also know that is like if you go on Twitter and write intersectional, there's a there are people called social justice warriors that they're mockingly called social justice warriors, and intersectionality is seen as this like dirty word. And I was like, wow, I wasn't thinking of it like that. I was thinking about getting you guys to research something, getting you out of like freshman writing research silos. So I really had to check myself, and that was one of those instances where like I just want to like complicate this whole notion of things that I've tried out and haven't worked and have worked. So I don't quite know where I am, but that's kind of a good disclaimer for you all. Like it's okay to try on pedagogical hats and either decide that it half fits or it doesn't fit or it all the way fits and you love it, and then you put it on and you decide it all the way fits and it loves it, but then your students don't love it and you're like, let's take a step back. I have a similar conversation we have when it comes to grading contracts, because I wholeheartedly believe in grading contracts, and my students don't understand them at all. So we'll get there. And then the community literacy, the article that was really long that you read by Linda Flowers. I know a lot of you were like, I don't know about this. But I wanted to offer one small caveat is I think that she's a good example of talking about thinking of our capacity as writing teachers to be applicable in other places. I don't think she's really talking about bringing in high school students or college freshmen into a complex community literacy space and doing like amazing work there. I don't think that that's even possible. I think she's talking about grad students, and I think she's talking about the professor's role here in these community literacy spaces. So to be fair, all of your critiques that were like, I don't understand how we get undergrads or 14 to 18 year olds to do this, point well taken. That said, some of the stuff that she does talk about with service learning is interesting. There's the critique in her article of service learning, and my college has participated in service learning. It's a pretty interesting experience for the students, but there is kind of a weird element of like, what are we doing here today? Like, are we helping? Aren't we helping? What does this teach students about helping? How much are we giving back? What kind of experience are we have? So if you were interested in doing something in your class or creating some sort of community space or thinking about bringing your students out in the world, just like I think that's a good article to think about and to theorize these different power relationships. You might not ever get around them because of the age of the students and the level of engage. Like, it's not like your students could be in some of these spaces every single week. But just knowing that is helpful. Just having that mind frame is that, okay, this is what like service learning that just like kind of goes in and does nothing is, and here's what I'd actually like my students to do. And I think Allie started thinking along those lines. Or wait, maybe not Allie. Maybe it was Allie. Why didn't I write this down well? Sorry, I think it was Allie who was talking about her school does sort of community service days and rethinking some of these days, you know, not exactly 100% based on these articles, but thinking about them a little bit differently. So Lori, I don't know if I've already said this, but Lori asked really great questions. And I think even Christina was like, I could probably sit with these questions for forever. Yeah, I hear you. I think one of the biggest ones that a lot of you answered was, does politics have a space in this classroom? And Austin talked about how it ends up getting revealed. Like, somehow students want, like, if you're like, let's talk about binge drinking, like if your topic was something very college related or whatever, or students start to self-select issues, is that it, like, for me, and I think for Austin too, like, it's hard, it gets revealed in some way. You're in a classroom discussion and you're talking about binge drinking on campus, and then all of a sudden someone brings up Donald Trump and you're like, whoa, where did we get that from? I remember I was teaching business writing, which is not exactly very political sometimes. I teach professional and technical writing too, and the last couple of semesters, I think I've said, I've been teaching a lot of that, and it's not a very political classroom, like, not at all. We're in the world of work, we're in the world of memos. Probably the most political thing that we do is that I ask them to think about audience and users at the center of producing documents, which isn't actually even that political. But during last year at this time, the Parkland shooting happened, and I almost, like, I teach on Fridays, and I couldn't almost bring myself to go into class that Friday. And I don't know if some of you have some of these experiences as well. And so I showed up to my Friday class, and it, like, I was like, I don't know, like, maybe I shouldn't have taught that day. But I was so, like, having a hard time that I kind of got emotional in class. And at that point, you know, Austin, politics do get revealed. My students are like, are you okay? And I'm like, no, I actually get really worried about this stuff, that I don't get to come home to my students because, you know, a gunman shoots into the largest college campus in the United States. And they were like, oh, you know, and so and then we also had to start having these conversations about what we would do in an active shooter situation. And so, like, it's just situations like that you know, I felt very vulnerable, like bell hooks. But it's tough. So Michelle talks about, so let's see. Some of you got a little skeptical of the community literacy model, which we kind of talked. Amy was skeptical of it, and hopefully I laid to rest any of the complications that this is about 18-year-old students. But Michelle talked about the limits of student beliefs. Forcing a student to participate in a community-based project with a group they aren't comfortable with only reiterates their discomfort with that group. That's a really good point. So maybe it's the choice, like if you're trying to work with a group, maybe it's trying to choose as quote-unquote safe or politically neutral a group as you can. That could be really helpful. Dana talked about choice as being a buzzword in secondary ed right now. I'd like to hear more about that because I don't have as much experience. But she had this, if you didn't get to read, she had this really great kind of interaction with a student who wrote Fortnite is gay in his paper. Obviously, gay not meaning homosexual, but gay meaning the pejorative, stupid, right? There was that whole commercial at one point, like, this is gay. And I think it had like Hillary Duff or something. And she has this exchange with him, and he, she gets worried about, in that exchange about just reinforcing his belief. Is that clearly he's fine with what he said, and he's kind of doubling down on it. And that is actually very tough. Not that she's trying to get him to change his opinion about Fortnite. She's trying to get him to change his wording. And as writing teachers, like, I think that language and expression and like, this is definitely our realm. And so we shouldn't be afraid to tackle a student. Tackle is the wrong word. We shouldn't be afraid to take on a student like this. We should, however, be understanding that students like this also might not listen to you. That it could be, in this instance, that you get pegged as the hippie professor, which kind of stinks, because you're just, writing's your terrain, and you're like, you can't, like, this isn't, I want you to be more precise with your language. And they're like, oh, you hippie, right? And you're like, that's not exactly even what we're talking about. Let's see. I wrote down Ashley's talking about community. Anthony likes to play devil's advocate. Try to be like politically neutral in the class when they're taught, when students get into a discussion. And that's the other thing too, is because sometimes in the classroom, argument, right? When writing an argument is the subject of the class, like, people argue about politics, and not to say that politics has, even if you're trying to like keep it out of the classroom, what else do you bring in arguments about? And I'm sure you all have great ideas. But Anthony's going to play devil's advocate. I am not also a very good, I wrote this to him, I don't have a very good poker face. So not always, but sometimes when I play a devil's advocate, it doesn't work out for me. So, I don't know if it's easier for me to, I struggle with this, and especially in this political climate. I am a liberal, and so I'm going to tell you that. I'm an open-minded person, but I'm a practical about my job, but I struggle with, like, should I say this stuff to students at this point in time? Or is this, they're going to just read me through those lenses, which I think Aria gets too, because she kind of talks about it as her job. She says, I see it at my job regularly. Teachers and administration deeply caught up in the politics. I notice how it influences their interactions, lessons, and communications with the student body. I know how they fight to reach students first with their perception. So yeah, I don't want students to also like see me and be like, well, she can't teach me anything because, she told me she's liberal. That would stink. But then also, like, what if they just guess it the whole time, so that's tough. I don't know where I'm at with that, but maybe like taking a line from Bell Hooks, being a little bit more vulnerable there. And that's not to say that politics needs to be everything about anyone's classroom, but I'm increasingly finding it a fraught space. Like most of you, like, I agree, it would be tough to be like, this is English 102 themed as politics. At the same time, I also find it a space where it can sometimes be unavoidable. Sometimes, however, though, the students don't care at all, and they don't want to hear about it at all. And let's see. Aaron had a great kind of back and forth about, or not back and forth, but kind of had a good thing about community and some of the writing he did in the military. So if you get a chance to take a look at it, that's really interesting. If any of you all do writing in your communities, I do some volunteer work that is writing. I don't always write collectively with people because I'm not very good at it. Somebody will write something and I'm like, I don't like that. So then I just rewrite it, which is probably the wrong way to go, but that's fine. So anyway, that's this week. I really enjoy these readings. They're complicated and fraught in ways that as a 22-year-old grad student, I never ever thought would be. But now, I'll age myself as a 36-year-old woman, I'm definitely constantly coming up and butting against, some of the things that I really held on to when I was 22. So anyway, great work. And I am looking forward to conversing with you about your projects. So make sure you prepare. And when I say prepare, I mean prepare as much as you can. Have a good idea of what you want to do. If you can't narrow it down to one or two, or if you can't narrow it down to one, then grab a couple of things, what's been striking you in the readings, stuff like that. It will help focus our conversation a little bit, and then it can help me help you. So again, I'm going to share a link with you tomorrow, and I have my phone number as a backup. And what I'm saying is to text me if for whatever reason something's not working. They're 30 minutes for a reason. It could take like 1 or 2 minutes of the first 1 or 2 minutes of the first of each meeting to just make sure that we're connected. So, all right. Well, have a good rest of your evening. Thank you.